Podcast.
Welcome to Our Weird World. I'm your host, John Henson, and today, this is the fourth time we're doing it. This is how, look, this is the 250th episode. I have to repeat topics because, other better researched podcasts would just tell you one story at a time and they would go deep into the details and all that. But honestly, it gets boring after a while. I'm all about action here, all right? I'm not trying to get into unnecessary details, all right? I'm not trying to tell you every single childhood event that happened in a serial killer's life, because it's not like it's all canon, right? So, sometimes we're going to combine stuff, because maybe it only takes me 10 minutes to tell you a story. And I'm trying to, give you a little more. I have a 30-minute commute. These episodes are perfect for my commute. All right. At the same time, if you go back to when the show first started, I was only doing one story at a time and the episodes were 10 or 15 minutes long. So this is the fourth time we've done some episodes on some wacky wars throughout history. You can go back to episodes 50, 51, and 140 to check out the first three parts where we talked about wars that were fought over a watermelon and a golden kettle or something. I don't know. Just all kinds of stuff throughout, actual legitimate war. Well, I won't say legitimate wars, but that's what they were ultimately referred to throughout history. So, just dumb things that get people riled up and get fought over. And it's, oh boy, these are dumb today. As usual, three stories for you. We've got the Ice Cream War, the story of Patrick Murphy and how he influenced, I believe it was the Mexican War for Independence. I could be wrong, something around there. And then our first story of the day. I should just research the story. Tuesday. You know how hard it would be for me to just scroll down my notes right here and look and see, okay, what war is this? I actually still can't figure it out. So we're going to remember it together. That's also why I do it. I want to be part of this story. I'm trying to be part of it with you. And we're trying to hear and learn about these things together. Yeah, I already wrote the story, but I forgot because I wrote this story several years ago in another book that no one bought. And that's cool because now I'm here with you. We're in it together. Anyway, the other story that we're going to start with is of the Pastry War.
Story time. Story time. Story time? Story time.
In the early years following Mexico's independence from Spain, several different factions competed for full control over the government. Seems like that's still going on today with the drug cartels, but this caused a lot of widespread unrest throughout the country. And so with Spain now mostly out of the picture, France was like, we have another country to colonize. And they swooped in to try to strengthen the trade relationship they already had with Mexico. However, one of the biggest problems, and this by all accounts in history seems to be 100% true, Mexican citizens were unable to purchase cakes from French bakers who had, immigrated over because there was a lack of Spanish translators and the bakers didn't speak Spanish. And I guess, I don't know, didn't understand what it meant to point to a pastry or a cake and say, yo quiero, este. And the French baker's like, I don't know what you're saying. I don't speak your language. And this was causing a lot of issues because who knew Mexicans liked their sweets, all right? They did, they liked their dulce de leche and their churros, which are neither of which are French, but And here's the thing, I've had Mexican candy before. It's not great. Like, everything is spicy. Everything is spicy over there. All their candy. I like, probably not all of it. That's a stretch, but like most of it is spicy, and it's like it's very hot there. Wouldn't you want like the opposite of that? I don't know. But anyway, so Mexicans, it feels rude. I feel rude saying Mexicans, but that's what they are. They're Mexicans. Anyway, the Mexicans, they were getting real hot, as because it was already hot out there, but they're getting real heated because they can't buy their macaroons or their croissants or whatever, because the French bakers there just were like, I don't know what you're saying. And even more, bakers and other merchants were then refused compensation from the Mexican government whenever the angry Mexicans rioted and destroyed the bakery. So, like, and look, France is known for their bakery items. I get it. They're not worth rioting over. Like, they're okay. A croissant is okay. All right. Macaroons, take them or leave them. All right. Eclair, all day. All right. Not necessarily the pastry eclair, but like that whole dish, whatever that whole chocolate eclair dish is. Oh, yes, daddy. Oh, God dang, that's good stuff. I don't think that's actually French, though. I think that's like an American adaptation of it, which, of course, America made it better. But, you know, like French anything is not worth rioting over. But these Mexicans, they love that stuff so much that they started rioting and destroying French bakeries. And then the Mexican government was like, hey, it's or whatever they said. It was, anyway, but like the Mexican government came in and was just like, yeah, man, sorry, we're not gonna, like, you should learn how to speak Spanish. They don't speak Mexican, they speak Spanish, right? So, with this language barrier and a lack of government support and a higher tax on imported goods, thanks to the absence of a formal trade agreement between France and Mexico, which seemed problematic, French bakers and pastry chefs began lodging several complaints back to the French government. And in 1832, Chef Monsieur Remontel, he claimed that Mexican officers looted his bakery, causing 60,000 pesos in damage, even though his shop was only valued at 1,000 pesos, which is like $3. And like the exchange rate's wild. It was probably better back then. And so as more and more complaints mounted, the final straw came in 1837 when a French citizen was actually executed in Mexico for piracy over, I guess, importing pastries without paying the proper tariffs on them. I don't know. The following year in 1838, Prime Minister Louis Mathieu Mollet, he demanded 600,000 pesos in damages from the Mexican government over these increasing pastry riots. When Mexican President Anastasio Bustamante refused to pay, France sent their naval fleet all the way across the Atlantic to blockade all Mexican ports on the Gulf of Mexico from the Rio Grande all the way around the Horn to the Yucatan Peninsula. Additionally, the French were then ordered to attack the fortress of San Juan de Ulua and seize the city of Veracruz, which is their most important city on the Gulf Coast at that time. Might still be. I don't think it is, though. But the French, they're really good at war. They've been doing it for the last several hundred years. They easily seize Veracruz in December of 1838. And at that point, Mexico then declares war on France. This is a formal declaration of war against France, and it all started over really expensive French pastries. Texas, they hear about this. They're more than happy to ruin a Mexican's day, even if it is the French, which is weird. It's like the enemy of my enemy is my friend right here, right? So they send their own forces to patrol Corpus Christi Bay to prevent smugglers from taking supplies into Mexico to bypass, the French blockade. In one instance, a group of smugglers abandoned nearly 100 barrels of flour, almost certainly for more pastries, on the beach south of Corpus Christi Bay. Meanwhile, General Antonio Lopez de Santa Anna, the guy who made us remember the Alamo, he came out of retirement and offered his services to the Mexican government. Santa Anna was immediately sent into battle, where he was promptly shot in the leg by cannon fire, which shattered his ankle and forced its amputation. In response, Santa Anna ordered his amputated leg to be buried with full military honors, which is something that's like, I think a lot of people have heard that element of the story. I don't think a lot of people realized that he fought in a war over pastries and lost his leg because of that. You know, I think the narrative around Santa Anna, it's like, at least how it was when I was growing up, it was like Santa Anna, he did the Remember the Alamo stuff, and then his leg shattered and buried it. Like, there was no like retirement and like a couple of years of just him hanging out in Mexico. It's just like Alamo, buried leg, and that's it. So Santa Anna, his famous buried leg incident, full military honored buried leg, happened during the Pastry War in 1838. If I said 1938, I feel like I said 1938, and I was like, God, that's a really long time, because the Alamo was like before the Civil War. He's old, but no, it's 1838. So he, buries his leg with full military honors. He then uses his injuries and other propaganda, about, the Alamo and how he's doing all this, and he makes a quick rise to political power. Ultimately, French forces end up withdrawing from Mexico on March 9th, 1839, after a peace treaty was signed. Although Mexico was forced to pay the $600,000 or 600,000 pesos in damages as part of the treaty, they never actually ended up paying it, which ultimately resulted in another French intervention later down the road in 1861. Our next story here is of Patrick Murphy. We're in it together. We're going to learn what this was all about together, because I forgot. By 1928, the Cristero War, that's what it is, which was led by rebels who didn't like the new articles of the 1917 Mexican Constitution, was being waged all over Mexico. So here we go. All right, we've got the Mexicans again. Those silly Mexicans. They're putting new stuff in their Constitution, and a lot of people don't like it. And so the Cristero War is going on in 1928. And General Jose Gonzalo Escobar basically formed like this new faction of rebels and occupied the copper mining town of Cananea, which was close to the border with Arizona and the United States. Escobar then decided to take control of the town of Naco, which was even closer to the border and actually occupied both sides of the Mexico and Arizona border. On March 31st, 1929, Mexican rebels loaded a train car full of explosives and sent it toward the center of Naco, the Mexican Naco, right? So, like, if you look at a map on the Arizona-Mexico border, there's basically two Nacos. There's Naco, Arizona, and Naco, Mexico. So they sent this loaded train car full of bombs into the center of Naco, Mexico. Unfortunately, the train car derailed, because of course it would, and exploded before making it into town. No one really seemed to care at all about this, and so the rebels decided to then just see if any kind of enterprising Americans who were bored being out in the desert doing nothing felt like helping out their cause of blowing up an entire town. They soon found Patrick Murphy, a crop dusting pilot, and tasked him with forming a small fleet of his own. Murphy's friend, John Gore, was ultimately hired by the opposing Mexican forces, the Federales, to fight back. So the rebels go to Patrick Murphy. They're like, hey, do you want to come and destroy this town with us? And Patrick Murphy's like, hell yeah, dude. And then on the other side, the Federales were like, John Gore, you are Patrick Murphy's friend. I don't know what accent that is. Come and fight for us and make sure that Patrick Murphy don't steal Mexican town. That is not even close to a Spanish accent. I don't know what that is, but I kind of like it. Anyway, it's like if the Mexicans were in The Godfather. So during the day, and look, Patrick and John, they're like in it together. Like they're just like hanging out. They would go out like during the day. They would go out on various bombing runs against each other, right? Like Murphy would go out and he'd try to bomb Naco, while John Gory would go out and try to bomb, areas where the rebels were located. And then at the end of the day, they would just meet up at a bar in Naco, Arizona and talk about how silly their lives were. Like, it's just like, hey, man, this is crazy. We're just fighting Mexicans. We're fighting Mexicans with Mexicans. This is pretty sweet. Like, oh my God. Anyway, even stranger, both of these dudes bought homemade suitcase bombs for their runs from the same guy. So it's not like the rebels and the federales were outfitting them each with their own supply. These two dudes are just going to the same guy and getting their bombs made. And this a presumably Mexican dude is just selling bombs to both sides of the war. And so he's probably making bank. And like this, because this is why it's so dumb. Like, no one really cares about, like, I feel like it's one of those things where it's like, it would probably be like if, we tried to start adding a bunch of amendments to the Constitution, and like the MAGA Proud Boys started a war against like the Antifa people. And then like the vast majority of the rest of us just like didn't care. It's like, fine, go destroy Seattle and San Francisco and Nashville and, Dallas. Who cares? Like, no one cares. Like, go ahead, destroy those cities. We don't need them anyway. And so they're getting their bombs from the same guy. And these bombs were made by packing dynamite and shrapnel into a steel cylinder that had fins, and then stuffed into a suitcase that could be strapped to the side of an airplane and open to let them fall out. Super ghetto, right? Like, it's literally, when I said suitcase bomb, it was literally like, imagine a suitcase that like is just strapped to the side of the plane. And these dudes just reach out, unbuckle the suitcase, and just drop the bombs. Like, that's all it was. Soon, as many as 200 Americans started gathering along the border to watch Murphy and Gore like make their bombing runs, going so far as to just bring their children and set up picnics as if war was just like a regular sporting event that you could watch. It's just like, hey, honey, after church, we're going to go watch the war today. Let's go watch those silly Mexicans blow each other up. USA. It's so ridiculous. While the women and children watch, the men would be placing bets on where the next bombs would fall and what would be destroyed. It's like, and dudes still do this. Dudes will bet on anything. Over under on how many buildings get destroyed today. God, man, I mean, they've been struggling lately. I think I'm going to take the over on 13.5. I think they're going to turn it around today. They had a lot of buildings over there still standing. I like the over here. However, I want to take the prop bet that Gory's bomb hits first and causes damage. Doesn't have to be full destruction, but I'm going to take a prop on Gory to drop and damage something first. All right. Yeah, you know what? I like the odds on that. I'll make your odds at plus 500 on that. And like, I still don't know a lot of this betting terminology. I just see all these numbers and it's just like, like, give me, it's just like the Packers are plus 7.5 over the Titans. Does that mean they have to win by more than 7.5 for you to get the money? Or do they not have to win, but like, as long as they don't lose by more than 7.5, you get and then there's like money line and it's always negative, but you still win money if you get it. Like, it's just, it's so, no wonder people go broke doing it, because it's so complicated. But it's just all these people are like, yeah, I'll give you money with the possibility to win more money. And then I don't know what I'm doing, but here, like, yeah, I get it. It's complicated. Anyway, side note. So the dudes are placing bets. The women and the children are out there just in the sand, having a little picnic, watching planes bomb this tiny Mexican town. After 2 runs that produced nothing but duds, Murphy accidentally hit the Mexican custom house on the Mexican side where American spectators had gathered, because you used to be able to just cross the border without really any issue. But Murphy, he accidentally hits this house where a bunch of American spectators were, sending them scrambling for cover and actually running back across the border. By April 2nd, Murphy was then dropping bombs just kind of wherever he wanted to, because it's not like the rebels were going to like institute some like real order and leadership. You know, they're just there to cause chaos. A lot of the bombs that Murphy was dropping were landing on the Arizona side of the border. One bomb hit the Naco, Arizona post office, which technically is a federal offense. Murphy's bombs damaged several buildings on the Arizona side, including a pharmacy and a mechanic shop. Others left huge craters in the dirt, and one bomb destroyed a Dodge touring car owned by a Mexican officer that he had stored on the Arizona side, thinking it was going to be safer over there. Although no one was killed on the Arizona side, Murphy's bombs were responsible for several deaths in Mexico. Finally, on April 7th, 1839, Murphy's plane was shot down by Mexican soldiers, but he managed to land safely and scramble back across the border, where he was quickly arrested by American authorities. Murphy only spent a couple of nights in jail before being released, and the rebels eventually retreated to Agua Prieta, and within a few weeks, fighting in northern Mexico had all but stopped. Our last story here, going to the 1980s in Glasgow, Scotland, where ice cream vendors found themselves struggling to make ends meet. Can't imagine. Ice cream in Scotland, a notoriously not hot country. Cool. However, they quickly found that they could use their ice cream vans as storage for drugs and stolen goods, which they could then also sell at a markup to expand their revenue. So it's not that they're just running drugs. They're selling the drugs out of the ice cream. You know, it's just like, you know, playing the stupid music, and all these kids run up, their parents are back there, you know, just like, what can I get for you today? And then it's like, can I get an orange dreamsicle pop? Okay, what can I do for you, Mr. Parent? Yeah, can I get a gram of marijuana? Sure, that'll be 100 euro pence, whatever they used in the 1980s, right? So, within a couple of years of doing this, several ice cream vendors got on board with this, right? Like, it started with a couple of ice cream trucks, and they started making bank, because I can't imagine running an ice cream truck is a super lucrative enterprise to begin with, especially in Scotland. So now these ice cream vendors, they're starting to make bank. Other ice cream vendors, which I can't believe there were this many ice cream vendors in Glasgow, Scotland, but whatever. I mean, it's a big city, but come on. They decided to start employing this business strategy in smuggling and running drugs, which resulted in turf wars among rival ice cream vendors who didn't take too kindly to new blood on their streets. Over time, small battles erupted in the neighborhoods of Glasgow as rival ice cream vendors raided each other's vans and fired shotguns into the front windshields. On April 16th, 1984, the ice cream war reached its peak when 18-year-old Andrew Fat Boy Doyle, a member of the influential Marchetti family, refused to sell drugs on his route. In response, Fat Boy and his family were murdered after a more obedient gang member doused their home with gas and set it on fire. That's so crazy. You got a guy who's like, yeah, man, I feel really bad about selling drugs out of an ice cream van. It seems a little unethical. I'm not going to do it anymore. And then this other gang member's like, all right, I'll do it. And then he burns this house down and kills him and his family all inside. It's wild. At that point, after this happened, the public decided that getting their ice cream wasn't worth the cost of all the fighting and demanded action from police. Police, to their credit, swooped in and started taking care of business. Among those that were arrested, Thomas Campbell and Joe Steele were given life sentences for their role in the Doyle family murders and the ice cream wars as a whole. Campbell and Steele, however, refused to accept their sentence and spent the next 20 years appealing and constantly fighting the Scottish government. When the standard appeals process failed, a 1992 book about the case, Frightener, revealed that a key witness in the trial, William Love, had actually lied while under oath because he was pressured by Scottish police to provide evidence against Campbell. In response, Joe Steele broke out of prison several times for the sole purpose of staging protests against his conviction. Not to just get away and live life on the run forever. He just broke out of prison and then just started setting up shop like in front of a government office protesting his conviction. On one occasion, Steele actually superglued himself to Buckingham Palace. Meanwhile, Thomas Campbell staged his own protests inside the prison where he went on hunger strikes and refused to cut his hair. The case was eventually reopened in 1997, allowing both men to leave prison while everything was reviewed. Unfortunately for them, the appeal was denied and they were returned to prison in February of 1998. When another special request was denied, Campbell and Steele took their case to the newly formed Scottish Criminal Cases Review Commission, who not only took the case, but had the convictions overturned in 2004. Although Campbell called for a new investigation into the murder of the Doyle family, accusing a guy named Tam McGraw of actually committing the murder, Scottish authorities were so tired of dealing with this. They also just hadn't, like, ice cream vendors had apparently just stopped selling drugs altogether, so they dropped the issue entirely. There you go. Whacky Wars Part 4 in the books. Just so stupid. Of all the things that people have fought over the course of human history, not everything's going to make sense. And clearly, these did not make any sense whatsoever. So let's recap and see what we learned today.
What did we learn?
Number one, Mexico essentially went to war with France because they couldn't communicate with French pastry chefs on what they wanted in bakeries. And then Santa Anna comes out of retirement, gets his leg blown off, and has it buried with full military honors. And, like, Mexico kind of won the war. Like, they signed a peace treaty, but, like, they didn't do anything about it. Like, they never ended up paying the thing they agreed to pay. So, you know, French. Number two, Patrick Murphy and his buddy John Gore, hired by opposing forces in the Cristero War in Mexico, and then just started bombing the towns of Naco, Arizona and Naco, Mexico. Murphy did most of the bombing in Arizona, which is crazy that, you know, no one talked, like, because it's so silly, people don't really count it as like a wartime incident where America got bombed, but like on paper, it's exactly what happened. America got bombed during the Cristero War in Mexico. Number three, in the 1980s, ice cream vendors in Scotland started running drugs and selling them out of their ice cream vans to supplement their income. And the Scottish government, maybe they did, maybe they didn't, got some people to lie to get a couple people behind bars after an entire family got murdered over it. And then because they kept appealing and appealing, the government finally just gave up altogether.
What did we learn?
Next week on Our Weird World, we're into 2025. Happy New Year. It's a new month as well, which means the Weird Fun Bag is coming back. We're going to start the year, obviously, with 3 more stories of Bridget Cleary, Doride Martinovich, and Amina Abdullah. What happened to those people? It's going to get silly. We're going to start the year off with a bang with 3 really dumb, crazy stories. So can't wait to get that started and to wrap up season 5 over the next 3 months after that. And then it'll be on to season 6 with more silly weirdness and such. You get it. That's it. Thank you so much for continuing to listen. Keep telling all your friends and keep it weird.
This is a podcast.